Yeah, hello and welcome to this video, which is about round 11, right? 11 of this year's Tata Steel tournament. 11 means 3 rounds to go. So we are closing in on the end of this tournament, the finish line. So we had a couple of really interesting games in round 11. And I'm going to first tell you about the games that I'm not going to cover, even though they had their interesting moments, but we have to cut some things. So, not interesting. We had Karjakin Wesley So, which was a complete snoozer because Karjakin decided to not do anything at all against So's Berlin. You know, we had this line, which we know from the World Championship match as being like nothing at all. We had a couple of games like this already. So nothing happened in this game, absolutely nothing. Then we had the game Wojciech-Aronia, and that was actually quite interesting. Wojciech was better most of the time and got close to win, but ultimately Aronian managed to hold this game. Then we had Neptuniachi-Elyanov. That was a queen pawn opening. Yeah, not that exciting. I mean, it was still interesting, not comparable to this, but I'm not going to include it in the video. So some other games were much more interesting. I'm going to start with a key moment of the game between Richard Rapport and Luc van Vele. That was a typically offbeat opening for Rapport. And yeah, interestingly enough, we didn't play f4 here instead of knight f3, but we got an interesting position, really unconventional as you could expect. Knight g1 is a good move, trying for this. And yeah, this is going to be a very sharp game all of a sudden, with white pushing on the king side and black on the queen side. Yeah, this is what Van Vele went for, pushing the pawn all the way. And yeah, the funny thing is that the move g5, attacking this knight, Rapport just answered with capturing and g4. Yeah, he just ignored the attack on the knight to open up lines, h and g file. Okay, I'm not going to analyze it in much detail. I know it looks funky, but we have lots of things to check later. I want to go to one key moment, and I should really get my notes because otherwise I'm not understanding anything at all. It's just extremely sharp, and I have to go forward a little bit. I know this looks extremely complicated and tough to assess. There's one moment later that I want to check, and this is very typical tactical issue. So this position here, Rapport now, as you could see by my spoiler, took on g7. Let's have a look at this position. It's a case where white really doesn't have all that many moves. Yeah, the black queen is threatening checkmate, and the only other move that makes any sense is bishop c2. This is in fact the better move, but it is quite instructive to see why this move played by Rapport does not work. So he took there, the knight captured. If the king takes, white is actually going to mate. Queen g5, let's say here, rook h7, and black is going to be checkmated by the two heavy pieces. So knight captured, and now he gave the check on c7. And this now is quite instructive. We almost automatically assume that in a situation like that, the king has to move. Yeah, of course, I mean, here, this is all a time trouble issue also. Van Vele is down to 2 minutes, and he doesn't have much time to calculate it. But if you have more time, you can figure out that, in fact, instead of moving the king, he went to g8, which is going to be a draw. Instead of going with the king, he can play bishop d7. And it's sometimes difficult to see such a move. Here, the mate threat is still valid, and white has to react to that. If he takes king g8, bishop c2, black is playing this, and in fact, I mean, it looks dangerous, this check. But you can just go here. You know, this is a counter mate, so to say. Yeah? You can check, but this is counter checking. So tough. It's tough to see such a defense. Or in fact, this is a defense that actually wins ultimately. If white does not take immediately on d7, for example, playing this, then you can actually move the rook. And black is defending. Note that there is this old saying, the knight is the best friend of the king in defense. It's quite good that queen f5 is not working. The knight is indeed a good defender. It often blocks those checks by queens, those nearby checks, like on f5, h5, and so on. So here, if we go back, bishop b7 would have won the game for Van Vele. After king g8, bishop c2, bishop f5. That's actually necessary in this move. Yeah, it is a draw. White has to now give a perpetual. Yeah, you can never take as there's the mate on b2. So here, Van Vele had the chance to win the game. The next game I'm going to look at, and this is going to be in a bit more detail, is the game of the world champion Magnus Carlsen. Where is that game? And he was playing Adhiban. By the way, if you hear weird noises, that's because one of my neighbors, like down the street, owns a chopper, a Harley, and sometimes on Saturdays he will get this chopper out and just like aimlessly drive around the block. I know it sounds crazy, but it is what it is. And you always have those noises from the Harley's engine, so it's kind of funny. Anyway, let's see what happens, or let's hear what happens. The game Carlsen Adhiban. Here we've got 1e4, and Adhiban is always always good for a surprise. He plays the Scandinavian with knight f6. Not the most popular opening, but yeah, how bad can it be? Yeah, probably just a slight edge for white. In the game, knight f3 was played. Maybe Carlsen was keen to avoid funky lines like this. It's probably not the best line ever, but if you don't know it, it can be tricky. Knight f3 is a good conservative move to avoid complications, and this position type in itself always should be a little bit better for white. In the game, we had a really interesting development. I'm going to fast forward a little bit. Knight e5, and Adhiban took on e5. Interesting choice. Yeah, not grabbing on e2. Yeah, here queen takes, knight takes, pawn takes is a typical position type that is almost always a bit better for white due to the space advantage that the e5 pawn provides. So he took with this. If now d takes e5, black might preserve the bishop. And this is now a good piece. So bishop takes h5 was Carlsen's choice, and Adhiban went to g6. Okay, we got queen b3. Oftentimes, a good idea for white whenever the bishop on c8 has left early, and it's difficult for black now to handle this. The b7 pawn is attacked, and you don't want to play a passive move, really. Like this, for example. That just doesn't help. White already has the bishop pair in the back, and if he can consolidate and yeah, complete development and so on, like rook d1, c4, he's going to be fine. He played rook b8. And this is in fact involving a sacrifice. c4, knight f6.
Check.
And Carlsen went for it. He grabbed the a7 pawn. It's the kind of play that is playing with fire a little bit. Yeah, black is much better developed. He has not yet castled, but he doesn't need to castle necessarily in this position, as the rook is already on a half open file, and white still is not doing anything on the queen side. We see that bishop d6 and now bishop c7 gives Adhiban a clear attacking idea. Yeah, g3, you had to do something about it. Note that taking the pawn is not great because of bishop f4. In a position like this, white is able to push d5. Rook takes g3 is no perpetual, the queen can always come back. And black's king now feels a bit uncomfortable. This is not losing or anything, but white is definitely better. This is a better move, queen d7. The idea is that sometimes even e5 and queen takes h3 is a possibility. So Carlsen quickly pushes the h-pawn. He is a pawn up, but black's position is active and the queen on a7 still needs to lose time. Here we go, queen c5 and now b5 played by Adhiban. Black wants to accelerate the play, opening it up. And he has really nice compensation for this pawn, as we see rook c8, queen moves again, and here. Yeah, black is a pawn down, but those two pawns are not going anywhere anytime soon. They're not really effectively taking part in the game, and they can easily be taken by black at any given moment when the pressure is getting a little bit too serious. So here Carlsen basically had decided to snatch this pawn and try to weather the storm, but it is not a comfortable position to play. Yeah, those moves, queen d2, if you have to play like that, it's not nice. So we're going to go a little bit ahead. Bishop g5. Probably this isn't the best move. D takes e5 is probably safer. In a situation like that, black is active enough for sure. I mean, something like this is a pawn for white, but it's going to be extremely difficult to make something serious happen here. This is probably what Carlsen should have gone for. He went bishop g5, always trying to fight. You can rarely accuse him of not trying to make a fight out of games. But here, knight g4, this is already getting slightly uncomfortable for white. Rook c1, that got traded, and now rook e8 is a good move. The e-file is a good place to be for the rook. So rook d1 and black took on d4. Yeah, we see that black is extremely active. He's looking at the f2 square, the bishop also. Yeah, and white currently has to use the queen as a blockading piece, which is rarely nice. It's still nothing too serious. I mean, black is better, but it's not yet lost or anything. Bishop f4. Knight f6. Here the computer points out the move queen to d5. And this is, it seems, a quite strong idea. The idea is, amongst others, to try to play f6 and g5, pushing the bishop away. This is a very difficult move to find for a human player. One thing we have to note is that white can never take on d4 because of this trick. A tactic that everybody should know, and that I've fallen myself to a lot, in blitz. I've lost my queen, I think, countless times to that tactic. So oops, and the queen is gone. Okay, queen d5 was an interesting and good move probably, but knight f6 was played by the Indian player, and Carlsen went knight to c1, knight d5, and here in this position Carlsen only has one good move that he can play and should play, the move queen to f3. After queen to f3, he's probably going to be okay. Note that the knight is also now ready to occupy the d3 square, which is a lot better blockading concept than having the queen there. But the main thing is, what he did, he played this move. This does basically lose now to a black attack, if black plays correctly. Adhiban played the move queen to c6. That's not a bad move per se. I mean, it's not hurting black, but he had a very strong opportunity. And this is the move queen to, oops, sorry, queen to g4. And this is a move that now can be evaluated in a very clean way, because there's just a couple of possibilities at all. The rook is hanging. White does not have a decent move with the bishop. If he goes here, there is there's the same tactic that we're going to see in the other lines. I can show you. There's the move knight e3, and this is an extremely strong move now. The rook is attacked, and if white takes it,
check.
This is falling.
Check.
And at the end, black is going to take this, and the threat of e2 is fantastically strong. Yeah, there's not much that white can do. He could try this.
Check. Check.
But you're not going to survive this one. Black is attacking with all his pieces. Let's look again. That was the bishop move. But what about other moves? He could move the rook. Rook f1. Okay. White has to take.
Check. Check.
And again, there's the threat of taking and e2, and that's impossible to survive. What about queen to b3? Same story. This move still wins.
Check.
Yeah, note that there is this mate idea and e2. Yeah, impossible. It's just a win. It's just a win for black. The best defense, or the one that is most interesting, is rook e1. This does also lose, but here at least black has to find something special. The move knight e3 that was winning against all the other moves here does not win, interestingly enough, because of the move queen to e2. Yeah, looking at the rook. And now, after queen h3, white can actually do this and now set up a pin. This is still fairly complicated. Yeah, for example, black can go rook c8 and try to enter here. Yeah, the capture is still going to be quite tricky. Okay, this is all a bit of a moot point, because after queen g4, rook e1, black has a flat win, a clean win, with the fantastic move rook e3. Yeah, that's really great, yeah. And yeah, what is white supposed to do? You can take it in some ways, yeah. Pawn takes. Check. Again, black is taking.
Check.
And now setting up these discoveries. White is without a defense. He can take this, but this is a winning attack. There's just too much going on. Queen g2 mate, and yeah, if you take,
check. Check.
You're going to lose the house as well.
Check.
Just pick up this. So queen g4, rook e1, rook e3. That's really an amazing move. And this is a bit similar to a famous game by Alekhine. Is that? I think it was Reti, right? Reti, Alekhine, Baden-Baden 25. I would need to look that up to be sure. But this rook e3 is a bit of it's very reminiscent of that game. Yeah, white has no defense. If he takes with the bishop, you just take here. And the threat here is extremely strong. If white takes,
check.
We grab here.
Check. Check.
And everything is falling. It's great, yeah. Queen g4 was winning the game. But Adhiban didn't do it. He played queen to c6. Yeah, and now in fact, white is okay again. White is okay again. It was a real dodged bullet here for Carlsen. Queen g4 was... there's really no repair after that, absolutely. Yeah, in the game we had some simplifications, and they agreed to a draw here. So a very lucky moment here for the world champion. He played with fire a little bit by taking the pawn on a7 here in the opening. I think that's it's an understandable decision. You want to get some imbalance going, and this was the way to do it. However, the risk was pretty high, and in the complications, Adhiban had a winning possibility. In general, the Indian player is doing a great job in this tournament. I already said at the beginning that he will be interesting to watch, and I think I was quite right with that. His games are always, almost always, going to be interesting to watch. So, next game I want to check is Giri with white against Pentala Harikrishna. So we have an English opening, symmetrical English with black playing a quick d5, and now Giri went e4. Interesting. This is a line that I have played myself a couple of times, and in this line there has been a relatively recent development. Knight b4 is the normal move. Black tries to get this check into the picture. Bishop c4,
check,
knight check, and white goes king e2. In this position, it was always believed that black only has one real opportunity here or option to check and go back to e6. Here, white has a couple of interesting options. The most interesting one, and also the move that I had played in this position, is the move b4. I don't want to analyze this. There have been a couple of games with this line. A game that I recall offhand is the game between Levon Aronian and Topalov, played a while back, maybe 2 years ago or something. There is, however, an additional idea, or an idea that has been, where the evaluation has changed in recent years, is the move knight takes c1. This is a move that at first sight looks extremely risky, because, I mean, white's development is fantastically advanced. Yeah, he's got 3 pieces out, the rook on c1. The only thing that's kind of wrong is the king is on e2. And you're not having d4 in, so it looks a little bit unconventional, this position. However, again, white's development is fantastically strong. The computer thinks that black is fine there, basically, but I have to say that I have a hard time to believe in this, as at least in a practical game, the black side is extremely difficult to play. And we see what happens. Harikrishna now plays a6. Amazing. It looks extremely slow, but this is a way to stop any things on b5 happening. And black sometimes, believe it or not, plays b5 and then rook a7, d7. So d4 by Giri. We follow examples. This has been played before. Bishop d5. Rook a7, d takes c5. I mean, first glance, you think this is crazy for black. And yeah, still they play it, and the computer does not really dislike it all that much. I mean, it's something where, I mean, I don't believe in that. I'm sorry, I don't believe in this position for black, and I probably would need a lot more time to check with the computer why this should be any good. I mean, black currently is a pawn down even, and he tries to get it back with e6. Thing is, white does not have to move the bishop now. I understand that if white now, let's say, would play something like this, that black might be okay. Yeah, he might catch up. Rook d7, for example, queen c2, bishop b7. This was played in a game Yakovenko-Nepomniachtchi a couple of years back, and black actually won that game. I understand that this might be okay if you get c5 back and you get the bishop pair with black, okay. But I mean, Giri now played c6 and just left this bishop on d5 for the taking. And I simply cannot believe that this should be good for black. Harikrishna played b4 after some thought, which is okay, queen d4, rook c7, and knight a4. This is this piece sacrifice here on d5 is not going to be justified by a concrete tactic. But have a look at this position. I mean, there's a pawn on c6, supported by the pawn on d5. White has 2 pawns for the piece. And black's pieces here cannot move at all. I really cannot believe that this should be good, to be honest. And I find it a little bit weird that somebody would play into this with black. I mean, we have to see that black has choices. He can go to f4 here, for example. It's just more solid. Okay, maybe this is just something that he wanted to experiment with here, Harikrishna, but I completely hate this position. I'm not completely sure from an analytical point of view, like if you give it to a computer or play it in correspondence, chess or whatever, but from a practical point of view, I think black's position is fairly terrible. He played bishop e7. You can also look at bishop d6, what the engine is suggesting after a while, which is not a definite answer. You need much more time to get a full evaluation. This is what the engine gives. I just want to show the position.
Check.
Here, yeah, and it gives a slight edge for white. But, you know, would you like to play this with black? I mean, I take white here, I mean, like, in an instant. In the game, bishop e7 was played. Okay, Giri took the pawn. And now we had this.
Check.
In this position, in fact, the computer gives an interesting move that is very difficult to understand at first. Harikrishna took on d5. This is first of all what we have to consider. After that, white was completely winning. The computer, alternatively, note that this bishop is hanging. So this is what happened in the game. Yeah, the computer wants to play this move, and after knight takes, play queen d5. The idea is that this is hanging, and queen b5 with a check will pick up the knight. But again, look at this position.
Check.
White is going to play king h2 and use the h1 rook. This is not playable. I mean, you have zero coordination. Your king is on the 8, and those pieces are terrible. It's just funny idea to first give the bishop and then go for this queen d5 b5. Yeah, this was played, and Giri got the piece back here. Rook g8 and h3. Yeah, again, white is completely winning here. No surprise. I mean, if you just check, yeah, well, he's 2 pawns up, and the only thing that we can definitely state is that this position is quite murky. Yeah, it's really not very well organized, let's say. Okay, h3. What we also have to ask ourselves, what happens
Check.
if black takes this? White is going to play here, and then rook e1 next. The queen is just too offside. Yeah, like this. And if you try to play bishop e6,
Check.
you're going to be killed like that. Yeah, he played rook e6, queen f4, and where's the next one? Yeah, this was getting taken. This was taken, and Giri is doing it okay. Everything is good. Yeah, he activates. He gets the king to g2. This is all nice, but a couple of moves later, here, yeah, here he had an opportunity to win the game straight away with the move queen to f4. Intending queen to c7. It's pretty nice. That's what the engine is giving. Or you can have a less computerish solution with just taking. Like knight takes, knight e4. That's also excellent for white. Material is equal now, but black's position is not coordinated at all, and the rook is going to join the action pretty quickly. That's also winning. This is what Giri played. It doesn't look like a very natural move, but the thing is, it has a concrete problem. Queen a3, played by Harikrishna, which is a great move, very good move. The main point is that it looks at this knight, and we'll see quickly that this is going to be very relevant. Now, in this position, white has to be very precise. The move that he plays does actually lose, believe it or not. He played knight b6. And knight c5 was probably still okay. And here, bishop b7 was played, and we already see that there is something going on f3. Knight d5. And this is the moment where Harikrishna could have won. But it is something that with 2 minutes on the clock, yeah, it's tough to call it a big mistake because you have no time. The move that he played looks very normal. He went to e6, which is not going to do it. But rook d6 instead was extremely strong. The extremely aesthetic point is that after knight e7, black has knight e5. It's really great. I mean, just from a visual point of view. Now, the knight takes on e7, blocking the e file, and then knight e5 is coming, which is going to, yeah, going to win the game on f3. Yeah, this move, black is actually taking with the knight, threatening knight e1 double check. Yeah, I mean, yeah, who's going to see that with 2 minutes on the clock? Probably nobody. This was played, and now everything is okay again for white. Queen c5 is correct. And here, Harikrishna took on e1. Here, in fact, Giri could have won again, but this is tough already. Knight e1 is the most normal move, but queen d6 was a bit stronger, threatening these checkmates. Yeah, it's about getting black a little bit more uncoordinated and only then take. This kind of thing is extremely difficult to figure out. Not impossible, but difficult. He took on e1 immediately, and now after this, it seems that queen a5 was stronger, but queen a2. Now again, king h2 was winning, but you know, this is computer chess. Yeah, they now get to a position where there was something else. I'm sorry, I forgot that even the end there were some tricks. King d, knight f3, king d7, and now king h2 was played. Yeah, knight b6 here was a draw, but Giri played king h2, and this actually does lose due to queen e2. That was played by Harikrishna.
Check.
Knight f6, king c7, knight d5, and here they agreed to a draw. However,
Check.
if he would have gone to c8, it seems that black is actually winning the game. There is not much that's going to be tried now for white. This is hanging. And yeah, what is he supposed to do? Well, let's say, what happens if he moves the knight? I didn't analyze that. Let's say, okay, it looks bad, yeah, but queen to e7. Yeah, the thing is, those pawns will win, yeah? Yeah, black is a pawn, huh? Didn't look at that all that much. I looked at check, which is going to be answered by knight d8. Sorry, this,
check.
And now knight d8. And here we have a double attack on f3 and f2. Check and bishop c6, and that's going to be the end. Yeah, it's super tough to see. So it was an up and down fight. Yeah, both sides could have won. It's very tricky to play such a tactical position with no time. So very interesting game. Next game, but a draw. Yeah, we have all kinds of draws. Next game and the final game for this session, for this video, is going to be Wei Yi Karjakin. And why is that in my notes? It's all a mess. Yep, we got a Berlin with d3. So usually not the start of something extremely interesting, but Wei Yi is coming up here with an interesting piece of preparation. Played c3, castles, and in this position, white of course usually just castles, but he has a very principled continuation that is not seen all that often. And I always wondered actually, if there is something in these lines, because it never felt so straightforward to me. I mean, I'm not saying that like I knew it all along. I was just thinking that when I was looking at this with black years ago, that wasn't all that clear to me. But we're talking about 15 years ago, so it was just something, or 10 years ago. Just something that I had in mind when I saw the game. I was thinking that this isn't so clear. Okay, what did he do? He took on c6. Pawn takes and grabbing the pawn. White just takes the pawn, and this never had the reputation to be extremely problematic. But as I said, I always felt like this isn't all that clear to me. So what is black supposed to do? First of all, he has to react quite quickly. If you do something slow, then white is going to consolidate his pawn. Let's say you play like rook e8 or so. White is going back, and it's not clear that you get the pawn back now. Something like d5, there is e5. And this doesn't look like compensation at all. The only move that makes any sense is d5. That was played, directly opening it up. I mean, white is neglecting development. Of course, white cannot take on c6 because of queen e8. Yeah, that looks immediately awkward. This is hanging. There is knight g4 and so on. That isn't any good. But interesting is the move d4, which was played by Wei Yi. Yeah, bishop is hanging. It went to b6. Knight takes e4 is also a possibility. Okay, I don't want to analyze the whole line, but okay, this happened. And now he castled. And the pawn took on e4. All this has been played before. We see that Karjakin spent lots of time. This line is probably not, was probably not part of his regular preparation of things that he regularly looked at, and a good surprise by the Chinese player. Played bishop g5 and c5. Yeah, logical move. Yeah, black always has to be aware that if he's not careful, it could happen. I mean, he has to be absolutely very naive to allow that, but it could happen. If white would get in like b4, a3, and keep this bishop on b6 incarcerated, that it can never move, because that was a wrong arrow. Imagine a pawn on b4. You cannot go here, you cannot go here, and there are their own pawns. I'm drawing badly. Not this one. Okay, yeah, so c5 is a strategically very desirable move that makes the bishop active again. Yeah, knight d2. All this has been played before, and now Karjakin plays a new move, but it was certainly not a prepared novelty. It was just someone trying to, let's say, reinvent the wheel a little bit. He took on d4. It seems that this move is already leading into serious trouble. The move that has been played before here was bishop b7 in a grandmaster game. I found a game between Shaba Barlog and Arkady Naidic from 2011, where in fact Barlog also got the better position, but there are probably a couple of opportunities to improve. White took on c5 and played knight b3. Yeah, we have a position where white has the better pawn structure, black has the bishop pair. Interesting. It's an interesting position. In the game, he took on d4.
Challenge.
What the heck? No challenges, please. So, c takes d4 and knight takes e4. And now we see that there is enormous pressure on the f6 pawn. On the f6 knight. The main idea is queen f3. It's already difficult to give black some advice. He took it on c3, which is probably relatively best, but after queen f3, you're just in trouble. Interesting that Wei Yi spent so much time there. Looks like a fairly natural move and should be part of prep, Okay, anyway, I didn't check the clock times before I just looked at the moves, not the clock times, while analyzing. Yeah, black here has a big problem. F6 is just under severe pressure, and it seems that you only have the choice between what kind of worst position you have to play. Bishop b7 looks like the only move. C takes b2 is just not working. Yeah, threatening mate. So this is the move. White takes. Bishop e4 has to be played. Queen takes. And now black has the choice. Take with the pawn, take with the queen. And yeah, if you take with the pawn, the danger is that you're just going to get checkmated because your king position is extremely weak. I think white is also clearly better here after knight g4. If black takes on b2 now, after rook d1, that's going to be extremely tough to defend, probably impossible to. The computer after this gives the move f5. However, here after knight h6,
check.
In these moves, black's position looks terrible. Yeah, he has a completely wrecked pawn structure, and the knight is not that bad on h6 because it has a clear path back into the game. So here I see, white being clearly better. It seems like he's already in big trouble. Probably you can already blame that c takes d4 move. I don't think he's going to get a good position anymore. In the game, Karjakin took with the queen, which avoids the checkmates, obviously, as the king now is safe. But of course, you're running into knight d7, which is just a fork. So queen g6. And now Wei Yi is quickly going into this ending. Yeah, intermediate move, so at least you get a pawn. But here, this is a nice little move. Yeah, not automatically taking on b2. This is what often happens to club players or amateur players. They kind of see, okay, I have to take the pawn, right? Anyway, let's take the pawn. But you have an intermediate move. The pawn is not going to run away. And if you take here and black gets rook d8, it's just not as good. Yeah, now black has some options, and you can just occupy this file and then take this next. Rook e8, was that played in the game actually? No, king e7. But if you go rook e8, yeah, you can still play this to cover this. Or if you take, you also have this covered. So you're sure that you're not giving up any central file. King e7, rook b2. Yeah, this ending is technically winning for white as the c-pawn is so far back and black lacks coordination here a little bit. It is actually a bit surprising how quickly Karjakin loses this, but it's probably lost anyway. Yeah.
Check.
Okay, let's go fast forward. Here he resigned. It's impossible now to defend f7 after one of those rook moves. Yeah, so a great win for Wei Yi out of good preparation. I think he somehow managed to find a line that Karjakin did not really have on the radar, which was a bit surprising. I mean, this certainly was a key part of his opening prep for the World Championship match. But sometimes it happens. You forget something or you kind of confuse things. So Wei Yi with a good win. This actually sets up an interesting situation. Wesley So is still leading the tournament, but Wei Yi now is only half a point behind. And in round 12, Wei Yi is actually playing So. So an interesting matchup. If Wei Yi wins this game, he's going to overtake him and taking the lead in this event. Would be certainly fantastic for the Chinese youngster. But okay, he's got the black pieces and So hasn't lost in like ages, like 50 games or so. Will be difficult. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed the coverage of round 11. I'm going to be back with round 12 coverage probably late on Saturday. Thanks for watching.